Going to go over making a great offer to buy a home, whether you're a first-time home buyer or you've bought homes before. What do you need to do when you make an offer to make sure your offer, has the best chance of success of being accepted? There's nothing more frustrating when you find your dream home. Maybe you're a first-time home buyer or you're not, and you're looking for that home and you find something that you really want. You put an offer forward only to find that someone else offer was accepted and yours was rejected. Well, why is that? We're going to go over, into some detail in this video of what's the seller looking for in an offer. So, if you have an idea of what is a seller looking for in an offer, then you're going to have a good idea of what you need to put in your offer to make it really attractive. So stay tuned. We're going to go into all that right now. And, in case you haven't, I made another video about negotiations in an offer, and there's a link to that above right now. So if you haven't seen that, check that out, because part of not only making an offer and getting your offer accepted is, let's say you get an offer accepted, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get to closing the deal, because getting the offer accepted is just the first part of negotiating the contract to getting to the point of your offer is accepted. Then you have to go through different contingencies such as home inspections, appraisals, and a number of other things, and you have to get through their hoops, if you will, that you have to jump through, or hurdles you have to get over, and you have to negotiate through those hoops and hurdles in order to get to the final point of closing on the deal and then owning the home. So I went over that in another video, and like I said, there's a link above. Check that out if you don't know that. But in this video, we're going to go over from a seller's point of view what makes an offer attractive to a seller. So once you know this, then you're going to have a good idea of what you need to put in your offer. Okay, so let's get started. Well, the first thing and most obvious thing is price. The highest price, is obviously going to be, one of the more attractive points to consider for any seller, but that's not the only thing. And, in a previous video, I went over the idea of highest and best offer and final and best offer. And the idea here is that, from a seller's point of view, yes, price is the number one consideration. But let's say a seller has a number of offers that they're looking at, and they're all right around the same price point. Let's say they're asking $400,000, and they've got 5 or 6 offers on the table, and they're all coming in at around the same price. Maybe one's $398, maybe one's $400, maybe one's $401. Well, are they going to just take the $401 and not take the other ones? Maybe, but maybe not. And that depends on some of the other things that we're going to talk about right now. So what are they? Well, first of all, separate from price, the next thing that a seller is going to look at is the down payment. And that might seem strange to you, but why would a seller look at the down payment? Well, one thing a seller wants to know is your offer serious? Like, are you a serious buyer, or are you going to make an offer and that we accept it, and then for some reason or another the deal closed through, the deal falls through and it doesn't finish because maybe you really don't have the funds, or you can't close the loan deal or something of that nature. So, generally an indication that a buyer is really serious on buying your home is when they put a big amount in a down payment. So that doesn't necessarily mean that someone who doesn't put a big down payment down isn't serious about buying a home. Maybe they are, but it's just, if you're a seller and you see, let's say, a $400,000 home, and let's say 5 offers, people have put the minimal amount down. Let's say they put 3% down, or in an FHA loan, maybe they put 3.5% down. 3% down is around $12,000. And let's say someone else has put $50,000 down. Well, that's over 10%. That offer may look actually more attractive than someone who's put $12,000 down and offering $400 or $399. So that's just another point of consideration. And the point here is, if you can put more than the minimal down, let's say, you're thinking, well, I'm just going to put 3% down in a conventional loan, but I actually could put 5%, and maybe I can even find a way to put 10% down. you should try to do that. And maybe it's not possible for you to do that. Well, just put down whatever you can. But if you can put more than the minimal amount down, you should try and do that. And there's a big benefit in that. Let's say you can put 10% down or 5% down. Well, you're actually putting more in your equity. So now you own more of that home if the deal goes through, and that means that you owe less on a loan payment, which means your mortgage payments are going to be less. Obviously, in a $400,000 home, if you put, let's just say you put $100,000 down, now you only owe $300,000 left. So your loan is going to be for $300,000. Your mortgage payments are going to be less. If you just put the 3% down, which is $12,000, now you still owe $388,000. So your loan amount's going to be bigger and your monthly mortgage payments are going to be bigger. So there's a lot of advantages to putting as big a down payment down as possible. So that's the next factor. Separate from price is the amount of down payment you're willing and able to put down. That strangely ties into the next item, which might seem strange, but the next item to the seller is what kind of loan program you're using. Are you using a conventional loan? Are you using an FHA loan? Are you using a VA loan? And the reason, you might say, well, why does that make any difference? If someone's able to come up with the money for the house, what does it matter whether they're using a conventional financing or a VA loan or FHA loan? Why should that matter? Well, it ties back to the idea of the down payment. And that is usually people who are using a VA loan may put 0% down because you can do that. And then people who are using a FHA loan might often just be putting the minimal 3.5% down. So, they may well be qualified equally to purchase the home. And this is more a matter of perception. And it's not really about how well qualified the buyers are. The buyer who's using a VA loan who's putting 0% down may be better qualified in terms of debt to income ratio than someone who's putting 20% down. But the seller doesn't know that. Again, this is a matter of perception. And it's kind of unfair in a way, but it's just sometimes perception can seem reality to a seller. So a seller sees, well, I've got one offer, they're using a conventional loan, they're putting 20% down. That's it. So they put $100,000 down. That's what they want to put down on my home. And I've got someone using a veteran's loan and they're going to put zero down. They're not going to put any money down. So, even though, like I said, the person putting the VA loan might be more qualified than the conventional loan, perception is I've got one person putting $100,000 down and one person who's putting zero down. Again, so that's just a matter of perception. By all means, use the VA loan program, use an FHA loan program. But if you're doing that, if it's possible to get a conventional loan, see if you can do that. Maybe it's not, and that's okay too. Okay, so we're just talking about the seller's perspective here. It's not really in any way or shape or form talking about how well you are as a buyer. But this video is about what's going to make your offer more attractive to the seller. Okay, so we've gone over price. We've gone over down payment, and that ties into your loan type. The next thing would be, the amount that you put down, not only as a down payment, but there's also when you enter in a contract and you get your offer accepted, separate from the amount that you're willing to put down as a down payment, which is at the close of the deal. At the beginning of the deal, just after you're accepted, you're supposed to put down what's called an earnest money deposit. That's an initial amount. That's separate from your down payment, and the seller will stipulate it's usually between 1% and 3%. So the idea here is, did anyone not put down the 3%? So let's say a $400,000 home, 3% is $12,000. So they want you to put an earnest money deposit down of $12,000, or maybe $10,000, or maybe they say $5,000. So whatever the amount is that they're asking you to put down, it's like a good faith deposit. Make sure you put that full amount down. I had a client who Always wanted to negotiate on those terms. He said, I don't want to put the full earnest money deposit down. They're asking for 5. I'm going to put 3 down. And I was always telling them, trying to convince them not to do that, because from a seller's point of view, if someone's not even willing to put the amount of the earnest money deposit down, they're not going to take that offer seriously. They're saying, we've asked you to put $5,000 down initially, once we've accepted your offer, in order to begin the transaction, and you're not willing to come up with that initial $5,000 that we've asked. So we're not going to take your offer seriously, as opposed to all the other offers on the table, they've all put the $5,000 down. So that's another point. You make sure you put the full amount of the earnest money deposit down, whatever amount that is. So that's something that's the seller's going to be looking at. The next thing the seller's going to be looking at is what's called the time of escrow. So what's that all about? Well, when you put an offer in to buy a home and the offer's accepted, what happens is, we were just talking about the earnest money deposit. That's a good faith deposit. So you're going to give that to a third party. You don't give that to the seller. And often that third party is called an escrow company or a title company, and they hold that money for you until the transaction closes, and then they either give that money to the seller, and that's going to be part of your down payment or your closing costs, or if the transaction doesn't finish, let's say you do an inspection and you don't like what you see, and you have your inspection contingency in place, and you say, there's a big problem with the sewer, we don't want to go ahead and buy this place, we're backing out of the transaction, and at that point you have a right to get your earnest money deposit back. You put down, say, $5,000, the transaction doesn't go through, and now you get your $5,000 back. So that's what that's all about. So, but when you put that $5,000 down, the earnest money deposit, that's what's called the beginning of escrow. And from that point, when you put your earnest money deposit down, you have so many days that's written in the contract to complete the transaction. And typically, some examples are you've got 30 days to complete all the different things. They call that, closing of escrow. So, for example, you might have, 25 days to get your loan approved. You might have 10 days to do your inspection and do your due diligence there. You might have 15 days to get the appraisal done. So, there's some examples. They're the main ones: the inspection, your appraisal, and your loan contingency, getting your loan approved. So, one thing that will make an offer more attractive to some sellers is either mostly they want to shorten all those time periods. And why is that? Because the longer the time period drags out on a loan getting approved, or inspections getting done, or appraisals getting done, the longer those time periods go, the higher there is a chance of the deal falling through and something happening, and then you back out of the transaction, and then the seller's left, right at the beginning point, having to go through the whole process again. They don't want to do that. So if you shorten the time periods on some of those items, it makes it more attractive to the seller, because it means we can get this transaction done more quickly. We can get through, the inspection, we can get through the appraisal, you can get your loan approved more quickly, and we can get to the finish line more quickly, which is a really often attractive thing to the seller. So that's another major point that can make your offer really stand out, is if, for example, let's say often a typical time frame for getting your loan approved is 30 days. But let's say you already know that your lender is going to approve your loan, and you can talk to your lender and say, hey, listen, can we reduce the contingency from 30 days to get the loan approved to 15 days? And they might say, yes, we can absolutely do that. So you could reduce your time contingency on your contract, say, to 15 days to getting the loan approved. And then let's say also you already know this house is in good condition, and maybe the seller wants you to buy it as is, and you're willing to do that. So maybe, in the inspections, instead of having 10 days or 14 days to complete your inspections, you reduce that to 7 days. And then the same with the appraisal. Maybe you reduce the appraisal time. So what you're doing is you're shortening the time frame on every aspect of the transaction, and maybe now you can close the whole transaction. Instead of 30 days for the total escrow time period, you reduce it, say, to 21. That's an example of how you could make your offer much more attractive. And that's something you can talk to your real estate agent about. Talk to them about, hey, how can we reduce our time contingencies so we can close the deal more quickly and make our offer more attractive to the seller. So that's another big item. And another thing to make your offer stand out and more attractive to the seller is, if the seller has a bunch of offers on the table and they're all more or less identical, and yet somehow, let's say when you went and looked at the place, you saw, hey, I really like the place and I noticed that they had some furniture. Let's see, we want to they have a refrigerator and a washer and a dryer, and we want them to give us the refrigerator, washer, and dryer with the deal. So you've put in your contract that you want those items to be included with the deal. And let's say no one else did that. Well, in that case, your offer would be less attractive. Maybe the sellers are saying, actually, we'd prefer to keep the refrigerator ourselves to our new home, and a washer and a dryer, we want to take them with us. Maybe they don't, but maybe they do. So that's another item, is asking for additional items on the offer. So that's one area. Another area that buyers often ask for additional items on the offer, apart from, hey, we want you to include some of the personal items like, refrigerator, washer and dryer. Another thing that people often do, they might ask for the seller to contribute to the closing costs. Or they might ask the seller to pay for a home warranty. So they're typical things that people might ask, a buyer might ask for in an offer. So you might want to do that, but if you're in a competitive market and you want your offer to stand out, you might want to consider not asking the seller to contribute to the closing costs, and not asking the seller to contribute to the home warranty. You might say, listen, I'll buy the home warranty myself. Or oftentimes, and I often do this when I'm working with a buyer, if you might have a real estate agent that you're working with as a buyer, and they might offer to buy the home warranty for you, and you might even ask them if they're willing to do that. I'm absolutely willing to do that for buyers that I'm working with. I think that's a really good deal. So that's another area to make your offer more attractive. If you feel like you're in a competitive market and you need to make your offer really competitive and stand out, don't be asking the seller to leave you their fridge and all their personal items that they might want to take with them, and don't ask them for closing costs, and don't ask them to provide you with a home warranty. So there's just some items that you can talk with your real estate, the buyer. When you're the buyer, you can talk to your real estate agent about those items making your offer more attractive. Okay, so then another area that you can make your offer more attractive also is the idea on the opposite end, is offering the buyer maybe some time to stay in the home after the offer's closed. They call that a rent back agreement. So for example, you might offer the buyer a 30-day free rent back agreement. And the key here is, as a buyer, what you want to do is make sure your real estate agent, as the buyer on the buying side, make sure your real estate agent is reaching out and talking to the seller's real estate agent and talking to the seller's buyer to find out, what does the seller want? What's going to make this offer more attractive to the seller? And you might find out, hey, the seller, like I remember making an offer on a place with a buyer, and we talked to the seller, and we went to the home as we were doing a showing. It turns out that one of the sellers, the home was owned by a number of siblings, and one of the siblings was still living in the home. And that sibling told us that they would love to stay in the home for 30 days or 60 days after the house sold, because they needed to move, and it would give them a little more time just to to find a new place, and stuff like that. So having that knowledge, when we made an offer, we put in that we were willing to give the seller a rent back agreement, even a free rental period for 30 days. That made our offer really attractive. So that's another area, and that comes into, make sure you get your real estate agent as on the buying side to talk to the seller's real estate agent and find out what terms and conditions could make our offer really attractive to the seller, such as I just mentioned, like a rent back agreement, or they want the whole escrow period to close quickly. So those are some of the main items you can use to make your offer stand out. And finally, let's finish up with the first item, which is price. And that's really obvious, but obviously when you talk about price, you need to make sure your real estate agency is getting you good comps, comparable home prices. So what are similar homes selling for, what's a realistic market value for this home, and we want to make sure we're offering close to that value. So if they're asking $400,000, and maybe there's some comparable homes in the same neighborhood that have actually sold for $405,000. So if you know that, then you can make the offer for $400,000. You can even make an offer for $401,000, just to see if that's going to push your offer above any of the other offers on the table. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. We've gone over some of the main items to use. So I hope that was helpful. We've gone over the main items to make your offer attractive to the seller. And, check out the links below. Maybe you have someone to work with. If you're in the Las Vegas area and you need a good realtor to work with, I'd love to work with you, or I can give you a referral. But check out my links below. I can also refer you to good lenders to use. Maybe you're in another state and you need to know someone who's good to work with. I can help you with that too. So check out the links below. And also, leave me a message. I love it when people leave me messages with a question of something in the video that you're not sure about. I love answering the questions. Maybe I'll even make a video for you. And finally, if you found anything in this video helpful, hey, do me a favor, smash that like button and, hit the subscribe button so you can stay tuned for more videos. This channel is just for educational purposes, to educate you as a buyer or a seller so you can be more familiar with what real estate's all about. And thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.